And are we live? Are we live? I think we're live. Yes, I think we're live. I did it. Tia, I did it. I'm amazed. I am going to graduate to middle school of technology. This is wonderful. Hey,
Don't skip
Empowered.
elementary.
I know. Hey, Empowered Soul Network team. Great afternoon today. I've got the privilege of sharing with great colleague Tia Minzoni. She is the co-founder of Stella Jets, which is a luxury private travel service up in the air. And she's got an incredible story. So welcome, Tia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to your group. Will we be able to see any live questions or anything while we're talking?
No, not this, just in the comments later.
Okay.
And I'll make sure that you have all the information and things to be able to connect. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about the journey and the story towards Telejets. I know you've got a tremendous marketing background and so on. So, give us a little bit of the highlights.
Yeah, so Stella Jets is a woman-owned, myself and my daughter, private jet company. So we find private jet charters for people who like to fly in privacy, security, efficiency. Most people that fly private, they don't do it because it's some luxury thing. They do it because their time has become more valuable than the dollar. And so they know, a lot of our clients will say, hey, I need to get to a meeting in Houston and I need to get back by 6 o'clock to coach my son's little league game. And so a lot of the people who fly with us are people who, have their time is very valuable and we can get them there, especially with the way aviation is now. You just don't know with commercial aviation, is your flight even going to take off? So a lot of business people are traveling more and more private. There is that luxury side, which is really fun. But for the most part, it's usually a business decision or a time decision based on value and privacy. Some people need to be able to fly secure and privately. So those are the people that we usually monitor. I mean, that we usually not monitor, that we usually assist. And it was important to us to be women owned because there's not a lot of women in aviation. And there's not a lot of women in Fortune 500 executive roles either. So those are some of the things that we're passionate about, is helping other women, young and old, reach for the highest levels they can and think bigger. And that's what we've designed Stella Jets around.
And I think it's an amazing service. You and I were talking earlier about the women's basketball league. Now suddenly, just for the reason you said,
Yeah.
security, privacy, being able to monitor things better, especially for these up and coming stars that are stimulating all that, it's a business decision that they're
Yeah.
making. They can't avoid it, right?
Yeah, and the NBA has been flying private for decades, so there's no reason why the WNBA shouldn't. And as a woman-owned business, we definitely have been celebrating that decision.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Tia, what led up to this? Been doing Stella now for what? Is it 3 years? 2 years? 3 years?
Yeah,
Two
about
years?
2 years now. Yeah.
What led up to that? What was the inspiration behind it?
I was at an event. I was just telling you, I was in Salt Lake a couple weeks ago, and I was at an event. It's called Limitless, the event. And one of the speakers, Keaton Hoskins, he said, one of the things he realized he needed to be to achieve some of the things he's achieved is delusional. He needed to be slightly delusional. So I think that's part of what's in this. Like I was like, one day I'm going to have a private jet company and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And we're going to fly this and fly the dogs and blah, blah, blah. And it was one of those big way off dreams and goals that, inside you're really not sure if you're ever going to do that, but you say it anyway. And then as I know, I was diagnosed with cancer 5 years ago. And while going through that, I really didn't think I was going to survive. I wasn't one of those people that was like, I'm going to fight this and I'm going to win. I was like, yeah, I'm dying. That's it. So, I kind of like, this was it. And as I processed that, and I always say, like, you think you know what people who are diagnosed with cancer are going through, but you really don't know until you're diagnosed yourself. It's absolutely impossible to know. I'm a super
Hmm.
empathetic person. I had people really close to me going through cancer, and I was there with them every step of the way. And it wasn't until I was diagnosed that I was like, okay, I really didn't understand. So as I was processing that diagnosis, I wasn't really, your life kind of, you start thinking about all the things you've done and all the things you haven't done. And so for me, I wasn't dwelling on all the things I had done wrong or didn't do right or whatever. I was dwelling on the things I hadn't done yet that I still wanted to do, all the life that I still had to live. And, my daughter Jasmine, and, we had planned on visiting Scotland, and we had planned on having a private jet company, and we planned all these things. And I really thought that I was never going to be able to do that. So when I survived kidney cancer, I got, my notebook out and I wrote down all the reasons that I hadn't done the biggest delusional dreams I have, what was stopping me. And I had an intention to like break everything down and figure out what steps I needed to take and all this logical stuff. And I wrote the list down. And as I sat there and looked at it, I just saw my face on every single thing that I wrote down. I was like, I am the solution to every one of these. Don't have enough money. I know how to make money. Scratch that off. I can do that, right? Don't have the education. I know how to get educated. We have the internet. Scratch that off. Don't have access to the right people. I love meeting people. Scratch that off. And so I literally ended up wadding that list up, setting it on fire, throwing it in the fireplace, and said, there's nothing stopping me but me. And I've been just moving fast forward ever since.
Did you find that all of that buildup of this kind of taking my own power in some the way some people talk, did that actually help you in the healing process?
Yeah, there are definitely things that I feel are happen to us that are out of our control to some extent. But what I feel is that when we take responsibility, we take our power back. So as long as it was someone else's responsibility, or, I didn't have enough money. Whose responsibility is that? Well, when I take the responsibility for that, then I have control over it. And now that's an issue that's no longer an issue because I can fix it. And I think that goes with almost everything in life. Every time I come up to a problem or an issue, when I take responsibility for it, I gain all my power back. When I put that responsibility on the government or the economy or the war overseas or what happened when I was 5, I have no control over any of that stuff. So when I take responsibility, then all of a sudden I gain my control back. And now I'm just delusional enough to feel like there's nothing that can stop me.
Tia, what would you say would be for the people listening out there? And we'll certainly, when we get done, make sure you put the comments in under the under the video, and tag some people and let them know. But for the people that see this, how would you suggest that they start taking that responsibility back? They're in the job that's a grind, 9 to 5. They get their paycheck, they live with paycheck, to check, but they have the thoughts, I don't like this anymore. So how do they start with beginning what you did?
Yeah. I would say, from what's worked for me, from my own
Hmm.
experience, because I always felt like I had more potential and I had a bigger calling. And I didn't start in a privileged place, and I made a lot of really poor decisions that put me, we live the life we choose, right? Or we live a life based on our choices. So I made a lot of choices as a young adult that didn't put me in a privileged situation. And again, taking responsibility for that, learning what the problem is, right? And changing that. So I would say the very first step is just making a decision, right? When you make the decision that, hey, I'm going to take responsibility for where I am, then now you have the control over where you're going. And
Hmm.
so I understand living paycheck to paycheck. I've been homeless. I had 3 kids by the age of 17. I have seen struggle. I don't want to say more than most people, but I have seen my share of struggle. And it was when I was in that I didn't realize that I was the problem, that I was living a life based on my own choices. And I was just having this talk with my granddaughter who just turned 14. She probably seen her in the hallway back here. Um, and that is that you can't just make a change and then all of a sudden everything's great. You're living paycheck to paycheck. You can't just make a decision and tomorrow you're rich. That's not how it works. You've built up a lot of momentum by the choices you've made over your entire life, especially over the last year, 2 years, or whatever. So as you start to make consistent choices and consistent decisions to move in another direction, it's literally just like working out. You don't get abs the first day. You have to consistently make choices and take action to get your momentum rolling in a different direction. But if you have some faith, if you really believe in it, if you believe that you do have the control to do that, and you take consistent action, and it's okay if one day you only are 50%, one day you're 110%, another day you're 20%, as long as you're moving in the direction you want to go, all of a sudden your momentum starts to change. And then one day you're like, wow, how did I get here? And you have to stop and look back and see every single step in the staircase that you chose to take. And now you're still living a life based on your choices, but all of your choices have been consistent enough to build your momentum to go in the right direction where you want to be.
What would you say would be a signal for someone that, so a lot of times we second guess our choices. We
Oh, yeah.
wonder if we made the right choice. We slow down the momentum because, oh, I'm not quite sure about this, or there's so many
Yeah.
obstacles in front of me, or, whatever. What are the signals that someone knows that that's my purpose? That's the energy. I'm on it.
Yeah. You know, purpose is really hard to define, I think. For me, I always say the fastest way to succeed is to fail. So the more I fail, the faster I'm going to succeed because I learn. I don't just do the same thing over and over again. It's okay to fail. I allow myself to fail. And the faster I can, F up, the better, because I know the faster I'm going to get to where I'm going. So I take a lot of risk. You know me, that's definitely true, right? I take a lot of risk and it doesn't always work out, and that's okay. I learn a lesson and the next time I take a different risk, and I make sure that, you've seen the things that say the road to success is not like a straight line. It's like
Yeah.
this. So as long as, you're always going to have those mountains and valleys, but as long as your valleys are getting a little higher, your mountains will get a little higher, your valleys will get a little higher. All of a sudden, your valleys, your low days are at the same level as your high days, as your mountains a year ago. So you're always going to have your mountains and valleys, but as long as you're going in a direction to where they get a little bit higher, that's okay. You can live with that, right? You can live with that. All days are not going to be fabulous days, but you're gaining momentum. And all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, my bad days are better than my good days 5 years ago, right? So I think, for anyone who is trying to figure out if they're going in the right direction, that's how I would gauge it. I wouldn't gauge it to see if you're going in a straight line. Nothing does. But if you're building that momentum, then your lows are just not quite as low and your highs are a little bit higher. And before you know it, you're just in a place that you prayed to be in, that you have always wanted to be. And you look back and go, wait a minute, these are the problems I prayed for. Like, hallelujah, give me another one. Right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So do you have some kind of a method where you evaluate that or recognize that? Like you step back at the end of the week and go, "Oh, okay, we did this better," or do you have some kind of way that you are able to process that so you can know and give yourself a pat on the back, or how do you work that?
Nowadays, I am living in just a surreal reality. I feel like I've quantum leaped, and I know that it's all of try not to sneeze, I got an itchy nose. I know that it's all of the tiny steps that I've taken are finally paying off. I got my momentum rolling. I rolled my momentum uphill, 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 and now I'm finally at a coasting stage, and it's just going beautifully, and I love it. But every morning when I wake up, I do a couple of things. I have, everybody has their morning routines. So the first thing I do when I wake up, a lot of people pray before they go to sleep, which I do. But in the morning, I wake up and I talk to myself about how lucky I am. I count on my blessings, and, I love my house, and I love the car that I drive, and I love my business and the people I get to meet. And so I have that talk with myself in the morning, and I love getting up because I just can't wait to see what's going to happen each day. And then another thing that I do during my morning routine while I'm doing my hair and makeup, which I'm really efficient at, takes about 30 minutes. Uh, I always listen to someone else's point of view. I know that's not quite an answer to your question,
No.
but years and years ago, I heard someone say, you are the sum of the five people that you're around the most. And I was like, well, shit, right? That's not good. And then I thought, well, the people I want to be like, I don't have any access to. And so I started going onto podcasts and onto YouTube, which, by the way, I have a podcast, Fight to Fly. So I started going onto podcasts and going onto YouTube and finding the people that I wished were in my circle and listening to their points of view. And I listened to everybody from Jim Ron to Ed Milet to David Meltzer to, Tony Robbins, literally anyone that I was like, I want to learn from these people. And every morning I still do that. I still take 30 minutes. I find a video or podcast that's 30 minutes or less, and I listen to it. And most of the time it resonates with me really well. Sometimes I listen to something about manifestation. Sometimes it's about entrepreneurship. But it really helps me to check that my head's in the right place, because there's a lot of education and diversity. So what I don't want to do is listen to the same person all the time, and all of a
Right.
sudden their thoughts are my thoughts. And I also don't want to just listen to myself all the time either. Like, I want to hear different points of view so that I can see different ways to combat a problem, or different ways to connect with people and stuff like that. So that's been a big part of my journey as well. Now, talking about measuring, how I measure what's worked and what hasn't. Um, Now I'm in the same rooms with those people. Now I'm friends with those people. A lot of the people that I've been listening to for 10 years because I didn't have access to them and I wanted them to be in my circle, they're literally in my circle. I was just telling you off camera, I was in New York last week with Gary Vee. Like, I never would have thought that that was going to happen. I thought the only access I was going to have was on YouTube. And so, there's big ways to measure it like that. And then I think there's small ways also, like, how do you feel? Right? How do you
Mm-hmm.
feel? Are you on the right track? How do you feel? I know that I'm not always just happy, but if I'm at peace, then I know I'm okay.
Beautiful. That's just beautiful. How many times have you heard people say, "Oh, how's your day going?" Well, I got up and I'm breathing.
Yeah.
You start with the basics, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
That-
for sure.
That's beautiful. But I have a two-part question as we kind of begin to wrap up here. Um, what would Tia of today say to Tia of 20 or 30 years ago?
Mm. Well, I'll tell you, Tia of 30 years ago wouldn't have listened to anything Tia would have said. So there's that. um,
Or bring it up 10, 15 years ago.
yeah, I think if I were talking to someone who was in the early stage of
Yeah.
their journey, I would tell them a couple of things. One, I wasted way too much time on other people,
Hmm.
right? Wasted way too much time on people who aren't around now, who had no potential to help me get to anywhere, or no intention to. I have made a lot of people rich because I have a very giving heart. And I didn't, and sometimes still don't, think to give to myself. So I
Hmm.
think one of the biggest lessons would be sure you're treating yourself as well as you treat everyone else. I think that's a good rule of thumb, and probably a lot of people, I know only from my point of view and some people that I mentor, that it never crosses your mind. You think about, if you're a giving person, you're thinking about making other people happy, and you're thinking about giving, and you don't give to yourself quite as much as you do everyone else. So that's a big one. I've really taken self-care very seriously. and also energy. The energy that I took on from other people and people that I was around and people that I felt I needed to have loyalty to, I think really held me back for a long time. So when I started paying attention to the frequency that I was on and the frequency of the people around me, and started taking stock in that, taking responsibility for that, that's when everything really started to play out the way that I wanted it to.
Amazing. It's beautiful. The other part to this question, and you could take it far back as you want, is what would the Tia of a while ago say about the Tia of today as she would be observing the Tia of today?
I think she would probably say, "How the hell did you do that?" There's a story that's so funny. I had a grandmother I wasn't really close. I was really close to one grandmother, not the other one. The one I wasn't that close to, I hadn't seen in a long time. She probably hadn't seen me since I was a teen mom. It was her last birthday. I was in my 30s. And my twin daughters were standing behind her, off the table, and they heard her ask my aunt, she said, "Who is that over there?" And she pointed at me, and my aunt said, "That's Tia." And she was like, "Well, who would have thought?" I probably would have had the same thought back then if I looked at my future, but I do wish I could have seen it because I would have got here a lot faster.
Hindsight's the best foresight, isn't it?
Right, for sure.
Tell us a little bit more about Stella Jets and how can we get in touch with you and connect and the
Yeah, for
podcast.
sure.
Just let us know.
For sure. So my podcast is called Fight to Fly. I think that speaks to my life and my story, but we also bring on other people who have been through incredible journeys to become high achievers. So we give a lot of lessons to a lot of inspiring stories. It's really my passion project. It's not something that makes me money, but it's something that I love because you get to a point in your life, you're always trying to gain altitude, right? And I got to a point where I said, okay, I've got some altitude. Now I just want to see how far I can reach. And so I'm really trying to use this podcast to reach, inspire, help people get out of their own way, break down the barriers that are holding them back from being their highest achieving self. And I would love for everyone to follow Fight to Fly on Instagram, on Facebook. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and just come and listen and let me know what you learn. That would be just such a gift for me, get a gift for my spirit. If we can just help one person with each show, then it just makes it all worth it. Stella Jets, we're doing a lot of really cool things. We're rolling out some stuff to make flying private more accessible. So I would say follow Stella Jets on social media and pay attention because we're doing some big stuff and it's going to get really exciting.
Oh, thank you so much, Tia. This has just been a delight. I've done probably 80 or 90 interviews now, and every single one of them I go, we could talk for hours. There's so much engagement. I really appreciate you being on and stick around for a minute when we get done with the streaming and make sure when we finish off that you go in and put all that information in the comments there and let people know that this is just
Sure.
marvelous. Anything else you want to share in closing?
I would just say figure out what's in your way, realize that that's your face on it, and then just start taking down those roadblocks and get moving. Get that momentum going.
There you go. There you go. Tia Minzoni, thank you so much. There you go, Empowered Soul Network. Another terrific interview, wonderful person. Make sure you connect up with Tia. Talk to you later. Have a good day. More coming tomorrow. Thank you, Tia.
Of course.